The growl came before the scream did, and I knew, in that single heartbeat, that the entire room was about to fall apart. I was Daniel Whitfield, the human liaison to the coalition, and I was kneeling on the floor of the Grand Assembly Hall with my rifle half taken apart in front of me, when the air itself seemed to freeze. Every alien delegate in that hall, from 6 different worlds, had gone completely still, not the polite stillness of diplomacy, the stillness of prey that has just smelled something it cannot outrun. Ambassador Vorin had been laughing a moment earlier. His people, the Ashvari, had thin crests along their heads that rose and fell with their mood, and his had been high and proud as he mocked my species in front of everyone. Deathworlders are a myth, he had said, a story your kind tells itself to feel important. He was still finishing that sentence when Kessa walked in. Kessa was not a delegate. She was not even supposed to be in the hall. She was a warhound from the Voth homeworld, a species so feared across the stars that most ambassadors kept at least 30 steps between themselves and any Voth handler out of pure instinct. She stood taller than my waist on 4 legs, with a chest built like an engine block, and eyes as dark and still as deep water. She had been resting outside the hall doors, waiting for me, the way she always did. But something in that room had frightened her. Maybe it was the sudden spike of fear from 100 alien hearts all at once. All of it aimed at nothing. All of it aimed at everything. Maybe predators can simply feel it when a room turns dangerous, even if the danger has not arrived yet. Her ears dropped flat against her skull, her lips pulled back from teeth built to crack shells that no human weapon could dent. And then came that sound, low and rising, not quite a roar, and not quite a warning, but something older than both. Every guard in the hall reached for something. I saw 11 hands move toward 11 different alarms, weapons and comm devices, all in the same second, and I understood with total clarity that we were about to have an incident that would take years to undo. A room full of frightened diplomats, a 200-kilogram predator with her guard fully raised, and a single wrong move away from chaos that no treaty could repair. So I did not reach for my rifle. I stood up slowly, and I walked straight toward her. Every instinct in that hall screamed against what I was doing. You do not walk toward a warhound with her teeth bared. You do not close the distance when the growl is still rising in her throat. But I had known Kessa since she was small enough to fit inside a supply crate, and I knew that fear, more than anger, was what had put that sound in her chest. I lowered myself to one knee in front of her, right there in the middle of the Grand Assembly Hall, with every ambassador from 6 different worlds watching. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "Hey, girl, I am right here." She did not look at me yet. Her eyes were locked on the ambassador, on the noise, on whatever threat her mind had built out of all that fear in the room. So I reached out and placed my palm flat against the side of her neck, right where the muscle bunched hardest before she moved. I did not hesitate. Hesitation is the one thing a predator can sense faster than fear itself. I began to hum, low in my chest. No real tune to it, nothing that needed translating, just a steady sound that said, without any words at all, that everything was under control. Her growl caught. It faltered, then faded, note by note, the way a held breath slowly lets go. The tension beneath my palm eased, degree by degree, until her whole body settled, and her tail, which had been rigid as a rod a moment before, curled loose around her paws. I kept my hand where it was. I kept humming. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. No one in that hall dared to breathe. "There she is," I said softly, and scratched behind one ear. Kessa, whose species name alone was enough to clear a room across a dozen different worlds, leaned her entire weight into my hand and made a low, rattling sound that was almost, unmistakably, contentment. I looked up at last. Ambassador Vorin had not moved an inch. His crest, which had been raised high with pride only minutes before, now lay completely flat against his skull. None of the delegates spoke. I think it took them a long moment to understand what they had just witnessed. Not a soldier raising a weapon. Not a guard shouting for order. A single man walking directly toward the most dangerous creature in the building and placing his bare hand on her, like she was something worth comforting instead of something to fear. You were saying something about myths, I said, still stroking the fur along Kessa's neck. He did not answer right away. None of them did. Finally, it was Ambassador Liren of the Corveni delegation who spoke, her many eyes wide and unblinking. How did you know she would not turn on you? She asked. I did not know, I said honestly. I decided. There is a difference. That is madness, said one of the guards near the doorway, a Patarn officer whose tail was still coiled tight with nerves. Maybe, I said, but let me tell you the real myth here. It is not that my species is dangerous. Every species in this hall carries its own kind of danger. The Ashvari have their poisons. The Corveni move as one mind through their hive links. The Patarn can shape sound itself into something none of us fully understand. Every one of you is dangerous in your own way. The real myth is the idea that danger and control are the same thing, that the only way to live beside something powerful is to be more powerful than it, or to run from it, or to lock it away. My people did not survive our early world by being the biggest threat in the room. We survived by becoming the one thing the true threats decided, against every instinct in their bodies, to trust. I looked down at Kessa, who was now leaning against my leg with her eyes half closed, utterly calm, the single most feared creature in the entire coalition, dozing peacefully in the middle of a diplomatic summit because a man had simply told her, without a single word, that everything was fine. You said Deathworlders are only stories because you have never actually seen one, I continued. You are right. You still have not seen one. All you have seen is a man calm a warhound with his hands, and you called it a trick. A Deathworlder is not the one who wins every fight. It is the one the fight never happens around, because everything capable of causing harm has already decided, somewhere deep in its oldest instincts, that he is simply not worth the trouble. Ambassador Voron's crest slowly rose back to its normal height, though it did not carry the same pride as before. It took him a long moment to find his voice again. I withdraw my earlier statement, he said quietly. Understood, I answered, giving Kessa one final scratch beneath her chin. She huffed with satisfaction and thumped her tail once against the polished floor. Now, shall we return to the trade discussion? I believe you were about to agree to the new terms. The laughter that had filled the hall earlier did not return. In its place came something quieter and far more lasting, a careful respect that settled over the room like dust after a storm. Every delegate there had come expecting a simple negotiation. Instead, they had learned something about my species that no textbook or treaty could have taught them. Kessa settled beneath the table at my feet, resting her chin on her paws, calm and steady, exactly the way she always was, once she knew there was nothing left to fear. I sat back down, picked up my rifle, and continued the same cleaning ritual my grandfather had started decades earlier, the same ritual carried on by every human liaison who came after him. Some traditions continue, no matter who happens to be watching. Outside the hall, the twin suns of that distant world were beginning to set, casting long golden light across the towering glass windows. Somewhere far beyond those windows, ships from a dozen different worlds waited in orbit, carrying delegates who would soon hear about what had happened today. By tomorrow, the story would spread far past this room, past this planet, into every corner of Coalition space. They would hear how a single human had walked straight toward the most feared creature in the galaxy without a weapon, without hesitation, and without fear, not because he was fearless, but because he understood something the rest of the galaxy had somehow forgotten. Strength is not always about power. Sometimes it is about trust, patience, and the quiet confidence to remain calm when everything around you says to run. As the hall slowly returned to its normal rhythm, whispers passed quietly between delegates from different worlds, each of them replaying what they had just witnessed. A predator calmed, a myth proven true. A single moment that would be remembered long after the trade agreement itself was forgotten. I placed the final piece of my rifle back together, the metal clicking softly into place, and Kessa lifted her head just enough to rest it against my knee. I smiled, scratched her ear one last time, and turned my attention back to the ambassadors, ready to finish what we had started. The room was calm now, but everyone inside it understood that nothing about this world, or the countless worlds now watching from beyond it, would ever be seen quite the same way again.